Welcome to the Pirate Tribe Network.
Showtime! Organizational change is like social change. It takes a revolution, not an evolution. Silenced women struggle to advocate for themselves. I uncover the negative bias for strong women in leadership positions. I help her understand the source of her superpower. How does she build it? How does she use it? I help her stay emotionally strong from those everyday challenges. I unsilence her.
Hey, welcome back, everyone. You're listening to Chelsea Jennings at the UnSilenceHer podcast, Speak, Shout, Sing. And today I am so very excited. I have brought one of the very best people in the world to have a conversation with you around her experiences and just some advice she has around being unsilenced in the workforce and how you might be able to learn from some of her lessons. So I have Erica Carey, and she's going to give you a little bit more information about her. Go ahead, Erica. Tell us a little bit about you.
Well, thanks for having me, Chelsea. I'm so happy to be here. Simply put, I'm a technologist. I'm very passionate about product, services, and innovation. And you know what? I'm in the business of designing and delivering digital experiences, and I aim to make those experiences exceptional.
That is awesome. So that means that we need to have a lot more conversations then, not just about Silencer, but that's fantastic. So, Erica, tell me a little bit more. That's your title, that's your role right now, but tell me a little bit more about your journey, right? So, where are you from? What did you study? How did you get here? Just so, we want to know a little bit more about who you are.
So I like to tell people I'm just a little brown girl from the south side of Chicago. Mm-hmm. I got here many ways, through Dallas, by Houston, back to Chicago, and then back to Dallas. But I am, like I said, at the end of the day, a technologist that's a creative at the same time. So I have this kindred soul and spirit that believes in marrying technology and creativity to create exceptional experiences. I got here the traditional way. I went to a 4-year college, worked for a little while. Went and got a 2-year MBA, master's degree in science and management. Came out and I've been working for a lot of big brands. So IBM, Target, Lockheed Martin. But I have a very interesting journey in that I'm often the only one like me in the room. Mm. And so I really want to talk to you about that today. And what that feels like, what that experience has been for me, and how others can, learn from us.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's such a great segue. So Erica and I have had quite a few conversations. I mean, there are a lot of things that we've have in common around our journey and the things that we've experienced. And we found that, we're not the only ones. What we talk about is common. We just don't talk about it to each other enough so that, there's a awareness around it. But of course, that's what we're here to do. We're here to bring awareness to this concept around silencing and the impact that it has on our leaders and how it sometimes keeps us from being our best selves in our leadership and our workplaces. So Erica, I'm just going to ask you, I'm going to jump right in, right? So if you think about silencing and, everything that you know about silencing and even our conversations, tell me about a time where you feel like you personally were silenced and who and what silenced you.
Well, I can talk about my current situation.
Oh, there you go.
Let's just get right
Jump right on in.
So I was really thinking hard about this. It's this whole concept of success begets success. But with that success, silencing is just prevalent, especially among women. And I feel like whenever women are becoming successful or having to climb the ladder to become successful, they have to take on these different personas and they have to take on these different alliances. And so those alliances sometimes enforce this degree of silencing that we're talking about. And it's sometimes very, very apparent. And sometimes it's this silencing that they know that they're kind of doing and something feels wrong about it, but they don't ever want to own up to it because they're getting success from the actions that they're actually doing.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to dig a little deeper in that, right? So tell me more about what you mean about having to take on these personas. I think I know, but let's just, for our audience, make sure that we're crystal clear.
Yeah, and so you may come into a role and you may be what you call or labeled yourself in previous roles a feminist. And so let's just get into my everyday job and role. I came into a new organization. My leader was new within that organization. So she was having to define herself, her brand within that organization, make alliances with other leaders and executives others within the chain of command. And so in doing that, she had to kind of morph herself and like adjust herself and align herself to the situation that she was in and having to define herself. And with that, I think comes a little bit of how do I shine? But when you shine, others may not be able to shine with you all the time. And so I think for her, in the last 3 years of her defining herself in this new role, ultimately had some consequences and impacts to leaders that she's a leader of, and it may have diminished their shine a little bit. And I think that's a form of silencing in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's kind of like that meme that's going around all the time saying that, you know, I don't have to unscrew my light bulb or your light bulb to make me shine, or something along that lines. But that's what it reminds me of.
And it's funny because I think that she's not intentionally doing it. And in some ways, she doesn't even want to do it. And she'll interject moments where like, oh, you can shine with me. But it's not all the moments that I can shine with you. And it's only the moments that she's picking and choosing for when her shine is going to be brighter than anyone else's shine, or even the opportunity for anyone else to shine.
So survival for her. So a little bit of a defense mechanism, possibly because she's not really comfortable in who she is and what she may be bringing to the table all the time.
Exactly. And it's a little bit, let me get mine and I'll let you or help you get yours. But the fact that we can get ours together is sad.
So what give me an example of just, if there's any one specific thing or example that happened that comes to mind, what would that look like, or what did that look like?
I think it's just opportunity and being present. So like having a seat at the table. So everyone can't sit at the table. And so if there's ever going to be a choice who's putting their butt in the seat, it's going to be her. And she's allowing me to come to the table when there's opportunities for both of us to sit at the table. But if we ever have to make a choice, she's going to be sitting at the table.
Right. So it sounds like that's happening pretty regular for you then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
Well, tell me, how does that make you feel? When
I think you have to recognize it for what it is. And to be honest, I don't know if I was in her position, what I could do differently, because I think it's the setup.
Yeah.
And so how do you change or blow up the setup or the scene or, reboot, and then without impacts that are detrimental to what you're trying to accomplish?
Right. Absolutely. And so then what happens? So how do you usually respond to that? I mean, is it something that you can feel like you actively do, or is it something that you have to manage on the inside? What happens?
I think you have to be strategic. And so for me, it's like, how do I help her get to where she wants to be faster so I can get to where I want to be faster? And then sometimes realizing and really trying to understand, is she even able or capable to be that person? And so I think I'm at a point right now, and then we've been at this for a while. We've been on this journey together for about 3.5 years or so. And so I've kind of reclaimed that, like, you're not going to be the person to get me to where I need to be. Let me reclaim that and manage my own message.
Right.
And my own shine. And it doesn't have to be with you. Like, I feel capable of shining by myself.
Okay. And what happens in that situation, right? So let's play it back, right? So you've talked about just kind of in general, maybe she has kind of limit your ability to have a seat at the table, mostly when she feels threatened, right? Which is, in other words, she's kind of pushing you and your thoughts to the side to make sure that she's shining. And what you're saying is that the way you respond is, of course, you have to, sometimes we have to play the game. I mean, there's a level of it that requires us to play the game. So we figure out, okay, how can we both win? So part of it, we accept the fact that part of our success is making our boss look good. And so you feel like you do that. You find that balance and you compromise through that. And I don't mean to use the term compromise because that might not be appropriate, but you flex your leadership style. But my question for you now is, when these things happen, and as a result, how do you show up as a leader? How do you feel like you're projecting to your team? How's all of those things?
So I think I've exhausted my opportunities of managing her up. Okay. And I think we both have come to a situation to the point where she's asking me, like, I've exhausted everything that I know to do because she recognizes this silencing because she's been silenced herself. And so so she recognizes that she's hit a ceiling. And so we together have kind of come to the point, it's just like, I can take this charge on and I can lead the way for me because I'm most invested in me.
Right.
In what I'm trying to do. And so I think it's taking ownership. But being mindful and respectful to and exhausting all those other opportunities or capabilities that you have out there to try to unsilence together. And so like I've gone as far as I can go with you. It's time for me to own this moving forward. And just because I am enabling you to shine doesn't mean that I can't find my own unique ways to shine too. And so like you mentioned with your teams and things like that, like I have this huge responsibility and accountability to my team, who are a team of women technologists, which I'm very proud of, from many backgrounds, descents, and situations where how they've gotten to where they're at, whether it be a technology track or a creative track, to do the things that we do in this world of product. And so I'm very proud of my team of women leaders that I have too. But I have this huge responsibility to be that person for them as well. And so I realize that they look up to me. They feed off my energy. They really want me to succeed as well. And so they're trying to manage me up, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to ever be put in the position to silence them as well. I think it's just harder the further up you climb.
That's a great point, and I'm going to get back to that. But before I do, I'm going to ask a little bit more. You says that, your boss, you've gotten to the place where you have a bit of a flow and you think that she recognizes it, right? So one of my charges is, of course, is to bring awareness to this. I think we all know that these things happen behind the scenes or to us on a daily basis, but I don't think the term silencing and the implications of it is used often, right? And so I want to make sure that we give it a name. And so with that in mind, you said that you and your boss talk about it. I mean, what does she say about it? If she's very conscious of what she does she ever kind of pull you over to the side and talk about it a little bit?
We just had a conversation about this yesterday, actually. And so it's like a very frequent conversation. And I'm with you. We don't necessarily call it silencing. I think we often refer to it in the reverse male counterpart. Like we have a counterpart and we're like, man, he's just failing up. Like, how do you fail up over and over and over again? It's like he just happens to be male, light blue eyes, and over 6 feet. I'm like, he's going to continually fail up by design.
Wow.
Well, we struggle and fight and I have to take everything. It's never given to us, if that makes any sense.
And that privilege is real, isn't it?
That privilege is real.
Yeah.
That privilege is real. And it's not going to go away. But how do you operate and maintain sanity in the space with that privilege? So we often talk about it. And I was thinking through today in our conversation, knowing that we were going to have this talk, and I was like, I should probably give it a label and a name. And I love the silencing of it. So I'm going to bring that back to her.
Yeah.
Now we can have some code language.
Yeah. And I use the example also. I mean, the journey of unconscious bias has gone a long way, right? People have known that these things happen to us all the time, but it wasn't until somebody put a name to it and made a campaign around it and brought awareness to it that, not to say that it's solving all of the world's problems, but it wasn't until we put a name to it and helped people to recognize that they do have that unconscious bias, whether it's, or they have bias, whether intentional or unconscious. But now there's a greater awareness around it. So yes, absolutely. That is my charge to try to help to bring awareness and put a name. I want to call it by name and let everybody know this is what happens. And people have different responses to it. I mean, you sound very, very strong in, still in the moment into what's happening to you. And, you've found a way to work with your leader to do that. But that doesn't happen to everybody. Sometimes, the results are people kind of withdraw. I mean, they don't show up as a leader as well. They don't have the right alliances to kind of help them through that. So I'm really, really happy to hear that. But I'm going to go back to your other point, right? You said that, you want to make sure that you're conscious of if you ever do it to others, right? So let's talk about that.
I'm Chelsea Jennings. You're listening to the UnSilenceHer podcast on Potatron.com.
Do you feel like you've ever silenced anyone in their role?
I'm sure there's been some moments. I don't think that they've ever been intentional. But since we've started having this conversation more loosely, I'm making sure that I'm intentional about not doing it. Even so much to the point where giving people opportunities in a manner where they may fail, but at least they have the opportunity to fail and learn from that failure. I call it failing fast and getting up and winning.
Love it.
Versus
Let me say that again. Failing fast and getting up and
winning. Girl,
yes,
fail
girl.
fast,
Go ahead.
get up and win.
Yes, ma'am.
And so we had an opportunity, like one of the leaders on my team, we had this huge regional global call that we were on. And I was just like, I'm going to turn the mic over to you. Like, I could talk on this call, but I think you're able and capable. We prepped for it. Did she do as great as I wanted her to do on the call? I don't know. We have some learning opportunities, but I didn't silence her.
Right. Absolutely. And that's part of growth, right?
Right.
Kids have to fall a couple of times before they get up and learn to walk. So that's fantastic. And I applaud you as a leader.
Yeah,
right,
and I'm sure someone
it.
will come back from my leadership team and say like, hey, we really expected to hear your voice on that call. And I will explain to them my methodology and why I allowed her to speak on the call and what we're doing and how we're going to make her stronger.
Yeah. So one of the things, and we haven't talked about it explicitly, but one of the things that I always look into, or that I did research on when you think about silencing, it's those micro communications, those microaggressions, the communications, but even the labels, right? So everybody knows it. They refer to, especially Black women, aggressive, strong-willed, hard to deal with, emotional, all of those things, right? And so if you think about that as one way of silencing, as well as all of the other things, do you feel like you've ever missed out on an opportunity as a result of someone trying to silence you? Because of course, again, the way that we respond to it sometimes is we might not be as confident in our delivery or in our leadership. So do you feel like that's ever happened to you?
Yes, time and time again. But I think that I don't let those missed opportunities dictate the future. And so I come back for the missed opportunity, or I'm always there for the next opportunity. And I think that's what makes all the difference. And then showing up as your whole person and your whole self. I think if you are continually trying to morph yourself or redefine yourself to some kind of persona that someone is wanting you to fit in, that you're not even built by nature to fit into, you just lose yourself. Yeah. And so that's something I had to learn very early on in my career and my journey, that I'm going to be me.
So you get up and win.
I get up and win.
Yeah,
and sometimes I don't win, and then I get up again and try to win again.
Absolutely.
It's just finding those moments and celebrating those wins as well.
Wonderful. Yeah. I love it. So let's talk about, we talked about you and your personal experiences, what's happened to you. We've talked about, things that you may have done, whether conscious or unconscious, but we have to acknowledge the fact that silencing happens to all of us, right? Or we all always do it there, whether intentional or not. Has there been a situation where you've witnessed silencing and, you saw it happening to somebody else? Tell me about that and, describe the situation a little bit.
This is not necessarily a time where I witnessed it per se, but this was a time where someone told me about a moment when they were silenced and how that really was impactful to them. And I think those are the things that really get me down and I'm most sad about. So I have a coworker, she's Indian, Asian descent, and she was traveling with my leader along with one of our peers who is a white male. And they had this very important meeting with our chief human resource officer. Yep. And my boss actually asked her to sit away from the table. Don't sit at the table, sit in the back room and take notes and don't necessarily say anything. But she invited my peer, who was the white male, to sit at the table and be present and available for the conversation. I was just awestruck. I could not believe it. And I was just like, how does that happen today in this day and age? And I was just hurt by it. And I just realized that it's still very prevalent and real. And then I'm sure she's felt silenced in many ways. And then that was just an opportunity for her to rebuke that.
Yeah.
And she fell into it.
Absolutely. And what did she say? Yeah. How did she respond?
She was hurt by it. And she was just I just can't believe this is happening to me. And I think in the moment, she wasn't in a position to react and counteract it. And she just went along with it.
Yeah.
But in hindsight, I think she would act differently if it happened again.
Yeah, that is the classic situation. I tell you, everyone that I talked to mentioned the fact that, they got knocked off their, game in the moment.
It's surprising.
But, and if they were to think about it, they would probably come back to say, we joke around and say it's like a paper cut. You don't even realize it hurt until you walk away.
Yes.
But if you could address it right there in the moment, you probably would behave differently.
Exactly.
And sometimes, and I'll think about this too, because I didn't realize you were in the room. But if you were in the room as a leader, what do you feel like you could do to support her in that moment? Is there anything?
I wasn't in the room. This is like her telling me after the fact. If I was in the room, though, I would grab her. And if I knew that this was happening, I would grab her and I was like, let's both go sit at the table. Yeah. And I would like sandwich the little white man. You get to be a part of Oreo. Congratulations. Good for you. And I would dare someone to say something about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the reason why I asked that too.
That's what I would do now. I don't know if I would do that 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah. You had your own journey. Yeah. You had your own journey to build your own confidence. And you've got positional power too as well. Exactly. So we have to respect that. But I asked that question too, because part of the conversation that I'm having with people is, not only understanding what would they need to feel supported in their moments, but also what could they do to support others in their moments, right? And a lot of times people say, after they've had an experience where they've been silent, someone will pull them to the side after the meeting in the back room talking about, I saw what happened. That was pretty horrible, right?
You're like, why you didn't do nothing?
Exactly. And so the whole thing is around helping people to know, okay, what can I do in the moment to support someone who has been silenced, and even understanding and let other people understand this is what I would have needed in the moment to help me through that. And so even if it's something that's a little bit, kind of subtle, but to say, to bring it back to say, hey, why don't you come up and sit with me and, let's talk, because I really value your opinion or something along those lines. And it doesn't have to be in direct contradiction because, but you were doing your part to do that. So there are quite a few things, depending on the situation, that, we want to make sure that we're providing people with the tools and things that they can do to not only be supported in their moments of needs, but also support others in the moments of needs.
I love that, Chelsea. Yeah. And the older I get and the longer that I'm in this battle and living this life, those moments matter.
Yeah.
And I think those are the moments that teach the most to everyone that's involved as well. So after the fact, it's easy to reflect. Yeah. But if you're in the moment, you're going to feel it. You're not going to forget it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we talked about your boss a little bit, and it made sense because I've heard a lot about it. Again, people may exhibit a little bit more aggressive behavior if they're less confident about what they're bringing to the table. But what other things do you feel like might fuel this type of behavior of silencing?
I think it's just cultural norms.
Yeah.
And wanting to fit in, seeing others do it and be successful.
Okay.
And just leading by example.
Yeah.
So we have the wrong examples.
We have the wrong examples. You're right. And part of, again, there's two dynamics, right? We talk about the unconscious versus the conscious, right? So there's the intentional silencing versus the unintentional. The unintentional, probably some of these micro communications and microaggressions that, if we were really thoughtful, we'd probably correct ourselves in the moment. But that intentional, sometimes it can get aggressive, right? And we sometimes feel like, maybe they don't even want to change,
right.
So that's another thing that probably fuels that behavior. And it goes back to the whole bias conversation. So, yeah. So what haven't I asked Erica? What's top of mind for Erica that she would want our audiences to know about, not just her experiences being silenced, but things that she's seen with others? What tips and things to say, okay, this is how you might be able to, react or respond, or even, find some self-love for yourself later on.
I felt like I knew you were going to ask this. And so I thought about it just a little bit, just a tiny bit. I think recently what's happened, like when you hit a door or you hit a wall, some things have been conceded to me or like brought to me as concessions. Like, Erica, I know you're a dynamic, powerful leader. We value you. There's this ceiling. We can't break past this ceiling, but can I give you this instead of this?
I knew that but was coming.
Yes. But can I give you this in despite of what's happening to us right now? And so that could look like, I can't get you that powerful position. I can't get you that next title, that next role, but I can give you more money. Will that pacify you? Will that temper you? will that sit you down? And so I think that comes back as a moral question. And sometimes it's like, hell no.
Right.
But then sometimes it's really attractive. Like
oh,
just show me the money.
I know. Every 2 weeks, that direct deposit looks real good, doesn't it?
And so I think you just have to be mindful of what you're in it for, how far you're willing to go with it, and what really matters most to you.
I like it. Yeah. You know, it's something that brought up a concept. Have you heard of the concept of the tempered radical? Mm-mm. So that's one of my favorite concepts for 2019, and I'm going to say it briefly, but it talks about, it's based on a scenario where there was a black man who was hired into a company in an executive position, and he basically said, you know what, we need to bring more diversity into this organization. And everybody pushed back and said, no, we don't need that. But what he did was, over the course of time, he hired black people for himself, right? He might have hired 2 people, and he talked to them to say, okay, I need you to do this. And over the course of time, everybody was kind of paying it forward, and he let everybody know what his mission was. All of that to say, he couldn't make that big bang type of statement that he needed to make, you know, in that moment. But at the same time, behind the scenes, he knew that, okay, this is still my passion. This is my purpose, and this is what I believe in. So one way or the other, even if it's, you know, I'm doing it behind the scenes, we are going to pull these people into this organization because this is the right thing to do for the organization and for the people. So that's what made me think, like, even if you can't make that big bang statement because they've tried to silence you in a certain way, there are other ways that you can get your message out.
Exactly. It's the baby steps over the giant leaps.
Steps. Absolutely. Yeah. So once again, Erica, thank you for joining me. This conversation has been fantastic. And for all of you out there, thank you for listening as well. Join me on this journey to unsilence her and help her speak, shout, and sing one leader at a time. And also, for more information, be sure to go to UnSilenceHer.com.
I'm Chelsea Jennings. Thank you for listening to the UnSilenceHer podcast. Remember to speak, shout, and sing on Podatron.com.
Sign up and be a part of the team. Be a Podatron at Podatron.com. Thank you for listening to Podatron.